Eric Church and Jelly Roll will get the last word at CRS.
Woo! What's up, CRS?
I gotta put my readers on.
The last time I was this nervous, it was the first time I walked into Eric Church's dressing room after a concert. And I had a list of questions in my pocket on a sheet of paper. And this is a true story. And I walked in that dressing room and I was like, if I don't weird this dude out immediately and he lets me ask him a couple of questions, I'm gonna pull out this sheet of paper and just berate him for hours.
So I have actually on the way here, I messed it up already. So I was sitting around this morning, I was making a list of like questions of things I wanted to talk about. And then I did it on my phone, and then I left my phone in the SUV that brought me over here. And I have no idea where that SUV went. So I want to work off memory and conversation here, but I want to talk about, I don't really need the readers to do this, but it just makes me look smarter. But I really want to talk about this. It's important to me. The first time we met, we were at the Gorge. We were in Washington. And I had heard a lot about Jay, and at this time you were, didn't need to be opening for me at the Gorge. And I remember thinking the crowd was incredible. And I'm described music snob. Like I'm the guy that listens to Bob Dylan and goes, man, the third line sucks. So I that night, I walk off the bus and I get side stage at the Gorge. And 5 minutes into your show, I said to my stage manager, I said, go get everybody out here. They need to see this. And what I saw, I've not seen in my career. And it was equal parts, it was musical, it was creative, but it was a revival. It was church, and you were the preacher. And I sat there and I watched that. And then after we got to hang out backstage and get to hang out with each other till late in the evening. And here's my question. I want to bounce around on you, especially now since I lost everything. So at this point, but my biggest question on this is, what I saw that night, when you were basically leading your flock, when did that start for you? Did that start after you had some success and awareness, or did that start before in smaller places, in venues and clubs? When did that, because what I saw was something that nobody's doing. And when did you have that moment of, okay, this is what I should be doing. I should be talking to these people. I should be leading these people. I should be planting the flag here.
Man, first of all, dude, thank you. This is still fucking unreal that we're sitting here just talking in front of a bunch of people like we were on the bus. I'm gonna take it back far if you don't mind. I remember the first thing that happened was I was in middle school and I got asked to read something. And I was some of y'all might not believe this, but I was a relatively timid kid that was not very well spoken or articulate. And they told me to read something and I stood up and I just was like, I could just hear my dad in my head, just do it with confidence. Like we had this thing in our house, it was like, even if you're fucking up, if you do it confidently, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if you're gonna come in at 3 a.m, walk in with your shoulders back and stomping your fucking feet. That was my dad's mentality, you know what I'm saying? So I stood up and I read it, and I remember people being amazed that I thought it was just because I could read. I thought they were just surprised I could read. So I was like, oh, I'm fucking killing it, I can read, you know? And So as soon as I started playing the bars, I knew that for whatever reason, I struggled at the time with small settings. Like if you put me and 4 people in a room, I'd be like, hey, anybody ever seen the Predator movie? You know what I mean? I'm that guy. But if you put me in front of 100 people at a bar, I just knew it. I grew up Southern Baptist, so I've always had that fire in me. I had a real fiery family. When we were passing the potatoes at the dinner table, you'd think we didn't like each other. You know what I mean? Like, I was our love language. Like, give no fucking potatoes. You know what I'm saying? I do, you know, that kind of environment. So
No, I grew up in a Southern Baptist family. And I can't remember past this fucking potatoes.
I hate you. I shouldn't have done this.
So continue, I'm sorry.
But that was kind of the thing. So I just, you know, much like you, and this is why I was so excited for us to get to do this publicly, was I got on your tour that year because you were like my North Star in the music business. I remember watching Toby in the late 90s and early 2000s and going, yo, there might be some different shit happening, you know? And then I remember your first 2 records coming out and me like immediately connecting with a guy who just had an album called Sinners Like Me. Like I just immediately, this is record store days, right? And I remember being like, I don't know what the fuck this dude's talking about, but I too am like him. You know what I mean? So it was like getting on your tour was special because I cut my teeth the same way. Like I watched you, and then I watched what I know Jason was around the same era, but it was a little later when he caught like the My Kind of Party shit. And then Brantley, like you ushered in an outlaw movement that was the first time I really looked at country music since the 70s and was like, there might be a place for me in this genre. And between that and what Kid Rock was doing, I was like, I just gotta meet Eric Church and Kid Rock. You know how you're so naive early in your career? You're like, if I could meet Eric Church, it'll solve all my problems. You know what I'm saying? So when I got the opportunity to open for you, I was like, I just want to go sit down and talk to this guy. If I get to do shows with him, even cooler. But like, my only request back to my management was like, can I meet him? And they were like, maybe. And I was like, fuck. All right. And they were honest. They were like, look, man, Eric likes you enough that he's bringing you on tour. He never brings nobody on tour. He only does 3-hour sets himself. He quit doing openers a decade ago. They was like, so you're already a foot in. But if Eric don't fuck with it, Eric's not gonna fuck with you. And I was like, that scared me too. I was like, what am I gonna do all these shows and I never see this fucking guy?
Sounds like your manager. He's also a Southern Baptist. We're redefining his genre.
Even worse, he's a New York Catholic. But because what I wanted to ask you, and if I didn't get to ask any other question, was when it was, I think it was Guys Like Me that you had wrote before your record deal. And you had already, and I've still never got to ask you this one, but you had already pitched and had hits. You'd had a like big Brandy record or Terry record, I think. And I think people in this room know the inside baseball is that when you're songwriting, you're not just giving away a song, sometimes you're giving away a sound. What made you, even that early in your career, desperate, hungry songwriter, go, nah, this is fucking for me though? Because like, to me, that was showing how early you knew who you were as an artist, where in this town, we watch people kind of find themselves as an artist. Their first single is My Heart Broke, their next single is Trucks and I'm in Love, and their next thing, you know, it's that kind of like, you don't know what the fuck's happening in their real life, where I felt immediately connected. What made you understand that early, that you were like, I can't give this away, this is the core sound of Eric Church?
Yeah, in a real way for me, it was failure. I was writing songs, that's what I wanted to do, that's what I came to town to do. And started trying to get cuts on everybody. I was writing at Sony Music, and I remember we had all these great songs that would make it to the last hour, and the decision makers or the artist would come back and go, yeah man, I just don't know that I can cut this song. It sounds like his song. And that was actually Mike Dungan who signed me. That was the biggest thing. So he said, you know, he said, you got a bunch of songs here, and he said, I've had every one of our artists look at these songs, and he said, they all come back and go, I just don't think I can do it that way. and the way he did it. So the songwriting really found the career for me. I mean, it was the songwriting that led me. I wasn't sitting there going, I'm going to get a record deal and I'm going to go on the road. It was songwriting that led to that. So, and then the sound part was just, I grew up on, a lot of influences like you did. I grew up on American rock and roll and those things. So, I saw my first AC/DC concert when I was 16 years old.
Was that your first concert?
That was my second concert. My first concert was Alabama, so whoop! Talking about whiplash, you need a neck brace for that shit. Also a Southern Baptist word, but I saw the AC/DC and I was like, wow, like what's this? Everybody's male, everybody's dressed in black. What is happening here, right? So that was kind of it for me, But it found me, I think a lot of times, and we're going to talk about that. I don't know what this is. Where I'm asking the fucking questions. I don't know. Turn this back on me, but I think so. But you mentioned earlier. You mentioned Southern Baptist. You mentioned your upbringing. I'm just going to turn it right back on. So take me back to the Pass the Fucking Potatoes household. What was it like? Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about what that was. Tell me about a young Jelly Roll. What was that like? What was the family like?
I was the baby. That was probably the funniest part of it. I was the youngest child in the house. I still have.
Out of how many?
I had three. Well, I had two older brothers and an older sister. I say three older brothers because my sister ended up marrying her high school sweetheart, who I've known my whole life. So he's like my bonus brother to me. So I grew up. I was the baby of all those, and to this day, my uncle calls me Baby Jason. I am 6'2", 370 pounds. I am a 40-year-old fucking man. And he was like, Baby Jason, and Mama Jane kisses me on the cheek and pinches my ear and shit. It's super cool. She just did it at the Opry. My household was a little turbulent. We lived in a middle, lower class neighborhood in Antioch right out here. Mother kind of struggled with drug addiction, daddy drank, you know what I mean? I was probably 13 years old when I found out vodka wasn't a sweetener. If you watch vodka get poured in a Stanley coffee cup your whole life at 5 a.m., you just assume it's fucking Sweet and Low. Until you're 13 and you're old enough to want to drink some Sweet and Low at your coffee. Never forget that conversation when I showed up to elementary school drunk. Yes, I am as white trash as I appear. But, dude, we sounded like a bunch of drunk alley cats when we sang together as a family, but fuck, we love doing it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know if you came from any music, but we came from not a guitar player, a bunch of tone-deaf drug addicts and alcoholics that just loved music. But it was this thing that would happen where music brought our house together. And my mother was so good at curating playlists. Like, if I say playlists, like this was fucking 93. But she was so good at like playing records and music for people that when she would come downstairs out of her hole, the whole neighborhood would come over here.
And what was the music? What was that?
It was everything. That was the best part. She took pride in knowing, and also when you, in the 90s, you defined yourself by music. You remember this, like you couldn't show up to school with a Metallica shirt on Monday and a Garth Brooks shirt on Friday. That was just fucking no. You were one or the other. So because of that,
or neither.
Yeah, or neither. Right? Amen. I fucking hate you, man. But she would play all these like. And everybody would have one. So we'd almost play like, today it would be past the auxiliary cable or Bluetooth maybe. Yeah. But she would play something and she would set it up with a story. And I tell this all the time, so I tell her this joke so y'all don't get upset. Back then, my mother, she would tell us these stories about the songs where she played. And back then, we didn't have Google, so we just had to believe the bitch. You know what I mean? We didn't have a choice. She laughs at that every time, ladies. She thinks that's funny for a record. You have to know it. But, so we'd have to believe she'd give these like, James Taylor wrote this song about, and she'd play it, you know what I mean? So then my older brother would be like, yo, check this out, and he'd play like Public Enemy. You know what I mean? Because he had to be defined, he was the hip hop guy. Then my sister was like, y'all haven't heard of grunge music yet, it's fixing to be the next big thing, and she'd play like a cassette tape from a rip band from fucking the Pacific Northwest. So that was like, I was influenced by all these things. And it came out of my songwriting immediately. But James, I tell you my 5 favorite artists of all time from the old eras. It's James, Jim, Bob, and Bob. Truly. That is it. James Taylor, Jim Croce, Bob Seger,
Yeah.
Bob Marley,
Yeah.
Bob Dylan.
Me too. So you grow up in that household. You have a lot of musical influences, and then you end up in jail, right?
Yes, sir.
So here's what I find.
I heard you on the radio the first time in jail.
Really?
That's a true story. Absolutely. Yes, sir. The first time I bought your record when I was home, I think whenever you came out with Sinners Like Me. Because one more time.
You got some records in jail? What,
Listen,
who am I talking to here?
No. Yeah, we gotta figure this.
Where's the Universal people at?
We gotta do better now. It's a big audience from this one. I hate to turn this back on you, but I need something from you because I won't get to talk to you after this about this. I've been thinking about this obsessively. In 2000, was it 11 that you dropped your sophomore record?
11 would have been Chief. 9 would have been Carolina.
9 would have been Carolina.
9 was Chief.
Sinners Like Me,
Carolina Chief. Yeah.
So like, I know you probably told the story so much you don't want to tell it again, but your story about Smoke a Little Smoke, your funeral story is my favorite story I've ever heard in the music business.
Yeah.
But between that, we could feel it as an audience that this Eric Church thing was getting fucking huge, but it still felt really underdogish and undergroundish. Tell me about 2009 and 2011 The Chief, and I'll tell you why I'm asking.
Okay.
In my career, I feel like Whitsitt Chapel was my Sinners Like Me. It was my introduction. Even though I've been doing this forever, it's my high. I'm a country music artist. My name is Jason Jelly Roll D. Ford. I'm from Nashville. Beautifully Broken is my Carolina. I still feel like I'm having this really big thing that's happening, but it still feels very underground and underdogish and cultural. And then I'm like, if history shows itself, and I'm like my mentor here, I am on the precipice of what could be the defining phallic. You fucking know it, dude, it's crazy. I'm getting goosebumps, dog. I'm thinking about this all the time. Because what would give me just those 2 years of you leading into Chief?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was, like you, we took a different path. And so the Sinners Like Me album was, the album, and then we get to, Carolina. And at that time, with label, what was happening, and this is going to be shocking for a lot of people here, but at that time in country radio, it was very, it was soccer mom kind of country, and I was not that, and it was kind of different, right? And I went to the label and I tried the Sinners Like Me album, and here's the biggest part of this. Even though it was on a small scale, and the reason I asked you that question first about the confidence that you had the first time I saw you, is I could see our people early. I don't care if it was 20. I could see them. And we went through some challenges and got fired from some tours, and we end up in these rock clubs at 11.
I think I heard that story.
Yeah, we've all heard that story. And at 11 o'clock at night, we would go on stage, right? And it got so weird, like we were playing these rock clubs. And our audience would start out sitting at the bar. There were all these tatted up guys, and we would start playing, and you could kind of see them. There's nobody on the dance floor, there's nobody in front of us. And midway through the performance, you would see these guys put their beer down and they'd walk up to the stage. So we were building this truly brick by brick. So coming into the Carolina album, I was dealing with a label, major label. They were like, this is the song and this is the song. And Carolina's the only album that I've said this before. It's the last album and the only album I've ever compromised on. And I did that because I'm fighting for my life, and put out a couple songs that were top 10 hits, and nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared, right? So you got the radio hit, it's all good. But what I was seeing at night, I'd play this song called Smoke a Little Smoke, and they would climb the walls. And this is when the marijuana era was accepted, like the Southern Baptist household.
This was before I was showing up super high to a conversation with Eric Church.
Yeah, So
I am also as high as I look.
one of the things I love. But so this was a thing where I remember, and listen, I'm gonna tell you something. As far as in the history of country music, one of the greatest executives that's ever lived in this town is Mike Duggan. 100%. Because he got it, and he would also do, if you had passion, then he backed you. And the biggest thing I would say with the radio or the industry, is finding those artists, and you're one of those artists. When you have the passion, what you want is you want a leader, you want a torch carrier, right? You want the guy that's gonna be the first guy to breach the door. And if you have an artist like that, you back that artist. But even if they're wrong, because they're willing to breach the door, right? Because a lot of artists aren't. So we were in a meeting, we were talking about things weren't going well, we had 2 top 10 hits and nothing happened, and they were discussing dropping me from the label. And they wanted a different song, and I said, no, it's gotta be Smoke Low Smoke. And that got their response, you would imagine. He had readers like me, and they bounced on the table twice before they hit me in the chest. And he goes, that makes no sense to me. I said, I know, me either. I said, but I've seen it. I've seen it in every bar and every club. And I said, I won't make another record for you unless that's a single. And he paused, a long, pregnant pause. And he said, but here's what's great about Mike, is he nodded, it's your funeral. And what was great about that, though, you know what he did? He backed it. And he put it as a single. So even though a lot of people make a big thing about that comment, but I didn't care about the comment, right? He backed it. And he went in and it changed a career. Then things got weird, and we came into the Chief album. So now that you asked me that question, I had a hard time on the Chief album, because I went from this outsider, this person that didn't feel like they belonged, right? I felt like that I shouldn't be here. And then all of a sudden, I got the biggest album in the world, I'm winning all the awards, and I didn't do great with it. So my question to you is, how are you doing going from your background to all of a sudden you go from 5 to 100? How's it been with shows? How's it been with your life? How's it been with schedule, personally? Like, what has that been like for you?
Man, this is where I'll talk to you like it's just me and you. I've handled it really well. I realized coming off of the year that I toured with you, I did like 140 dates that year, and I had gotten up to about 530 pounds. And I realized that if I was going to work as hard as God had gave me the opportunity to work, it was going to kill me if I didn't do something about my health. In the most real way. I can paint it, say it funny, but the flat truth is I realized that there's no way I was gonna live to be 50 years old. I was never gonna have the Eric Church career I dreamed of, or close to it, you know what I mean? If I didn't do something about the health, because I couldn't do all the emotional stuff, all the traveling, all the physical work, and at that weight. So once I got the weight off, dude, it's been soaring. Like I'm down, from that particular weight, I'm down like 145 pounds, dog. Thank y'all. I'm really proud of that. I'm super disciplined with it now. And it's made everything a lot easier. I will tell you this, and this is probably the wrong room to be this vulnerable, but I never thought that I could feel overpeopled. Like I didn't think that I'm such a people person. You know what I mean? I spent so much time in prison dreaming of people. You know what I mean? And it's for real. When you're in jail, you're just like, God, I wish there was somebody that didn't stab somebody I could talk to. You know what I mean? But I'm so empathetic, and I'm such an empath that I would hear these stories, and they motivated me for the longest about how much the music was helping. But then when you carry so much of it, I'm such an empath. I would go to the bus, and dude, I would just cry for like hours. mind. Fuck, not in front of CRS and Eric Church, Jesus. But over like a sign I seen in the crowd. Because like you said this, I want to touch back on something. I seen it earlier too. When I was in the clubs, like if it was 20 tickets, they were there 2 hours before doors open. All of them owned whatever I was trying to sell at the time and wanted it. I was like, there's something different happening here. But I would read signs in the crowd and I would just go home and cry. So I started this year taking the advice you gave me 2 years ago about being diligent about when I'm off, being off. You were like, it's so important that you separate. And then Keith Urban gave me another good piece of advice one day. He said, travel day is not an off day. And I was like, fuck. And I joked with him and I said, shit, you get travel days? I was like, I'm booked where I travel and do a show that day. But it's real. But dude, I've been handling it way better than I thought I would. And I've been really blessed because it's just been all family, dude. It's been God and family. It's like, I knew that once I got this platform that I wanted to become an even better person. I didn't want to be the story of the guy who finally got on after 38 years of knocking at the door and then just fucked it straight up. And I have a history of fucking things straight up, by the way. I mean, it would not have been far-fetched for me to have done it. So I just wanted to be very diligent about that. So I prioritize family and faith.
So I think,
hold on, while we're here, Chief, though, just one more circle back, I got you. Was Mr. Misunderstood after Chief?
yeah.
Can we talk about this for 2 seconds? Because I've never got to ask you about this either. You're a crazy son of a bitch, dude. You dropped the biggest record, like, in that decade of country music almost, as far as impact. Did you realize at the moment, circle back, answer this too, that you were changing culture? Like, was it 2 or 3 years later when you started being like, oh no, I might have started some whole other shit here?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I've had this talk with like Morgan and people like that, right? No, I didn't realize at the time. Because I think a lot of how the mechanism works is, it was weird to me, and I would challenge you on this. There's a number of things in your career you're going to go through, and you're going to tell yourself you're going to appreciate it, but you're going to be on day 5, and you're going to have traveled all night. And you're going to tell yourself, you're going to look around, and you're going to go, this is cool. But it'll happen again. It doesn't always happen again. And I think a lot of times when that's happening, that is lightning in a bottle. And it's called that for a reason. And I can remember certain shows now, and I feel like as I've gotten older, I try to appreciate all those things, because at the time when it was really turning up, when the engines were on and we were straight up to the atmosphere, I didn't do that as much. And I've challenged Morgan and other artists like, just trust me. I know you look around and you see a stadium of people and you see this moment and you go, yeah, it'll be this way tomorrow night, but it's not. Because over time, those things they become those things. So that I would say, and I had the same people say to me at this time. I had a conversation with George Strait one night, who's still having those moments, but George is a rarity, okay? George and Bruce, let's put them over here, But he said, trust me, he said, those moments, enjoy them. And it's kind of like when people say, when you have kids, and people go, it goes fast. And you know it does, right? You say yes, but then it does go fast. And it was that kind of conversation where it's like, listen, this is the thing. So I would say that you get a moment in time, we all do. And that's the moment in time that you're hot, right? Enjoy that. But you can be good the whole time. So your art doesn't have to be this, your art may do this, but it's a matter of just being good artistically and good in longevity. But I do look back now when I see a lot of younger artists and I see some of the stuff they're going through, and I'm like, I remember that, And I've tried to, and none of them do, by the way. As you asked me, did you know? No, I didn't know. No, I was just going through the thing, and I wish I knew. Maybe that's what makes it work. We have the naivety of not knowing, right? But no, I didn't know in that moment.
So the reason I said you're crazy is I'm thinking about 2015, and if I remember right, some country music purists correct me. I told y'all what condition I showed up in. But I think this is like right around the Montevello era, right? Like I think Sam came out the year before that year. So like there's this huge country pop moment happening. I think it was like, it might have been Luke's Loving, Hunting, Fishing Every Day year. It was like a big year.
Sounds right. Yeah.
It sounds like one of those years, like Carrie had a huge one, like I think Church Bells or something. It was a huge year. And out of nowhere, the as you said at the time, being the outlier, feeling like the outsider, doubles down on the most outlaw shit ever and does a surprise release that you send physical CDs up to your core fans. That's crazy, dog. Like, it's just nuts to me.
Well, trust me, it was crazy. I talk about this in my residency some, but we came up with the idea, and this is the funny part of the story. I mentioned Mike Gungan. We didn't let the label know that we were doing this, and we kept this top secret. We went so far as to we bought a record plant in Germany to make our vinyl records and CDs so that the U.S., the normal distribution, didn't know. So finally Mike Duncan gets word that this is going on. Right? It's just like 2 days before the CMAs is when we debuted it. And I'm going to get you into this story. This will tie it all together historically.
You want to talk about this so bad.
Yeah, so about 2 days before the CMAs, I get a call from Mike, and I didn't take the call. And it comes in, and like goes a voicemail. Hey, you reached Eric, leave me a message. He goes, "It's Duncan. Call me now." So I waited a couple hours. I called him. He goes, "Can we talk about something?" I said, "Yeah, Mike. What's up?" He goes, "Do you have a record?" I said, "Why do you ask?" He goes, "Because I'm hearing from some people in retail, and this is when we actually sold CDs. You guys, crazy concept, but we had physical product in Best Buy and Walmart." And he goes, "I'm hearing from some people that you have product in stores." And he goes, "I have not heard of this record." And I said, "Yeah." "Yes, you do." And he goes, "Do you think it would be important to tell your record label about that?" And I said, "Yes, but we didn't." And he goes, you want to walk me through it?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'll walk you through it." I said, "Mike, we got this record." I said, "It's called Mr. Misunderstood, and it's the shit." And I said, "We've been working on it, and the reason you're hearing about it is we mailed a copy to our fans. And I wanted them to get it first. Because what always happens, and you know this in the music industry, is the record goes, and this is no offense, I shouldn't tell this story in this room, but I'm gonna fucking tell it. Southern Baptist. And we always give the record to, you give it to radio, you give it to media, you give it, and then that opinion of that, then it goes to the fans. And I always thought that was backwards. Like, it should go to the fans, and then radio, and then critics. Because the fans are the ones that, you know, so that was the idea for this. That was the genesis. So I'm telling Mike all this, and he's not buying any of it. None of it. And he goes, "So talk me through it." I said, "Well, we're going to debut the song on the CMA Awards called Mr. Misunderstood. And the minute that song is over, it's going to go live." And I said, "We've already got the records in the stores. We went around the label." And he goes, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Well, genius." I said, "We labeled on Christmas album. 250,000 first week sales, right?" And he goes, "No name?" I said, "Nah." He goes, "How does Best Buy and Walmart retailers know to put your album out if you put Christmas out?" And I said, "Oh, that's a good question." "You ask hard questions, Mike." I said, "Well, we're gonna let them know that." He was like, "You do know that that's what we do." He said, Capitol Records. That's what he said. So we talk it through. And I'll tell you this story to tell you, like, sometimes in my life, and you're going to have these, you already had this, but you have things that are timestamps in your life. Like, I have a Taylor Swift connection, I have all these things. But we walked out on the CMA Awards, and we played Mr. Misunderstood, and I feel great about it. I ended, and I'm like, this is going to be the greatest campaign of all time. This is going to fuck up music for a decade. And the performance, you know how it works at CMAs, there's 2 stages. So we play, and then the thing comes up and the other act plays. The minute I finished Mr. Misunderstood, the other act was Justin Timberlake and Chris Stapleton.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
I got 1 minute into that and went, we're fucked. I mean, I just knew, it's like your whole moment, right? Is like, okay, this is it. And then I went, no, it's not.
Is this when they walked up the steps and did the whole
Whole
choreography?
thing.
Oh yeah, God, I
was so
felt
good.
fucked too.
Yeah. So I left there. It ended up being okay, but I left there going. I didn't talk to Dungan for a year and a half. You know? Yeah, I mean, to me, it was about just. And I think a lot of this is important. We did the same thing with concert posters. So when we started out, we kind of got into like, that's a rock and roll kind of thing. But we found early on, because we needed like gas money to get from show to show, we were hustling. And we figured out a way, we got little local artists, like these independent guys, and they would do like 30 posters from a show. We'd sell them for like $150 to the first 30, right? But it brought back that jam band type of fandom into country music. And we just different things you find along the way, that you're kind of hustling the whole time. But, anyway, I don't know where we're going.
Did you write Mr. Misunderstood in 30 days?
You know what?
Somebody said you wrote it was written and recorded in 30 days.
I did the entire Heart and Soul album. I wrote about 30 songs in 30 days. But Mr. Misunderstood was the greatest creative moment of my life was the Mr. Misunderstood album. So initially, that was going to be a duets album. And I was going to invite all of my heroes, Willie Nelson, Bruce, those guys, to come in and do songs with me. And I just got on a run. The first song I wrote was Misunderstood, and I wrote Record Year. And this is in a day. So like on a Monday, I wrote Misunderstood. On Tuesday, I wrote Record Year. On Wednesday, I wrote Knives in New Orleans. On Thursday, I wrote Mr. Smith Music. On Friday, I wrote, so it was a run. And we ended up not being a duet album. But it was just one of those things where that happens, and it's going to happen to you too, where you get on. I have no advice for that part. There's times that everything opens up, and I think putting yourself in that situation is pretty important. So, anyway, back to my turn. So what I found about you, and I think we all know this, disarmingly honest is what I love. That's what I love. When the first time we met, he really did walk in the first time we met at the Gorge. He walked in and we just met. And I got you a tequila thing. And we sat there. And he reaches in and he pulls out this sheet of paper that looks like it was like from Noah. Like it had been rolled and folded, and he pulls this thing out and he goes, and it was weird for me because I've met a lot of artists and I've done this, and I've never ever, hand to God, had somebody come in and pull out this thing, and he goes, well, I've got some things I want to ask you. I thought, wow, okay, sit down. So I think my question would be,
Can I say something about that story? That please, y'all, this is part of the story I probably shouldn't tell, but we sat in there, he answered every question. And I say this openly and publicly in every interview I do. The closest thing I have to a mentor in this music business has been Eric Church and Kid Rock. Nobody has given me more advice than you behind the scenes. You have been so good with me privately, publicly, just in every way. And when I say advice, I mean real deal. Like I went in with questions y'all don't even want to hear. Like, hey, at what point did you change your production? How many trucks were you taking on this tour in 2011? I mean, I was that in it, and he was ripping them back at me. But this dude was also ripping shots with me. And I'm like, all right, I'm drinking with Eric Church. And normally I bury people when I have to go dark with them. This is not how that night panned out for me. I left there a little worried that I wasn't sure. I left there and ended up skinny dipping in the Columbia River. True story, like Baloo the bear, just the bare necessity, just blowing it all out. I wake up the next afternoon at 5 p.m. I'm getting an IV in my
I've been trying to get you for a few hours.
No, this is where it gets good. I got an IV in my arm. I can't even open my eyes yet. I'm just in agonizing pain. I'm like, oh, I think Eric Church hates me. And then somebody comes in and goes, Eric Church has been trying to get a hold of you for like 3 hours. He wants you to come sing with him tonight. I was like, oh, fuck. And right then, I went somewhere between really excited, like, Eric Church likes me, to like, oh God, I am too hungover to sing on such a big stage. But sorry, I had to add that. I did go sing with him. It was one of the greatest cheers. I sung with him a few times now. It's been awesome.
So my question would be, and I'm taking you back here. I guess I'm interested in, there's, with your path, and you end up in jail, and you end up trying to navigate that world of, there's a lot of different sects, there's a lot of different things that are dangerous, a lot of different, and you have to be the person, and I guess what I'm asking is, what were you like? I'm taking you back a little. When you were in that world, were you kind of bring it all together, get along, kind of what I see you as now, which is just acceptance, right? Which is honesty. Is that, were you in any way that person then? And how did that affect the way you've done your shows live? Because what I see there, I walk out a lot of nights, I've seen a lot of acts. There's a shared audience, right? So if I play with George Strait or whoever, there's a percentage of our fans that are shared. And what I found interesting about that chorus show is they weren't shared. They may have liked me, but they were yours. And I'm serious. And I think that's why I said, go get everybody and bring them out here. I guess my question is there any part with you being in jail and going through that, did that help you with where you are in your career and how you do your music and how you communicate?
Yeah, it helped me a lot, Eric, especially, I never thought I would get jail credit for anything, but it made me learn to be adaptive, and I'll never forget, still to this day, the two hardest audiences I've ever stood in front of. Nobody's gonna believe this, but I went and did a show for some kids at Princeton. Whoa, fucking do not recommend. On a scale of 1 to 10, it sucked so bad. Oh, it was so bad. And tough as crap. But yeah, as you could guess. But the other one was the first time that I was like, I'm gonna try to start something in this unit musically. So I went down to I was in the violent offender gang unit at CCA, and I went into what they call the utility room, which is where they have like 3 microwaves and a trash can. You can heat up your soups or your items from commissary. And I went in there because it had a plexiglass window that when you hit, because of the utility room, it's all concrete and steel in there. It would echo, like doom, doom, doom. It had this really just big boom, not like a doom, doom, you know? And I took a spork, because you're not allowed to have a fork or a spoon in jail. You could stab somebody with a sword, so you get a spork. And I took my spork and I tapped it. Eric, I went. By the time I started beating on that table, now dude, by the way, I'm like one of 6 white guys in the unit, right? By the time I'm done beating on this window, for a few seconds, the whole unit's turned the TV off, quit playing cards, and they're standing on tables. I was like, oh, it's fixing to fucking happen. So I just start rapping about some shit, and I start singing a little chorus, and then some guy comes over and like freestyle cipher-wise, he does it. And right then I was like, oh no, I can bring this unit together. You know what I mean? Like, this is just like it brought my house together.
You were the preacher.
Yeah, just like it brought the neighborhood together. It's like I was the preacher, but it was the easiest sermon ever. It was the music. I just had to be the conductor. You know what I mean? And I brought it, and then it got to a thing where like dudes would start coming to me during the week, like, yo, I wrote something for Friday. You think this will be cool? Because they were trying to get in. You know what I mean? And like it turned into a thing, to the point that I heard Sheriff Hall, Darren Hall, our sheriff here in Davidson County, told me that they kept that going for years after I left that facility. That Friday tradition carried on for years.
And Jay, that's what I saw. I mean, like that night. That's the reason I asked that. You know, is I saw you have. I think everybody has to lean into their path and their journey, and you have a unique journey that not everybody has.
Did somebody ever tell you that Eric Church was not a marketable name?
Yeah, probably.
I wondered if we had that in common too. I didn't think Jelly Roll was going to be such a hit at first. Well, I will say this about Mike Dungan though, because I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up in front of this room, is that I have been blessed to have that in a man named Jonathan Loba at Broken Bow Records in Stony Brook. Much like you, that's why I started this with asking you about guys like me. I had been writing, and I write all the time. And when I knew I was going to work on a record, a country record, after Save Me, we had wrote a song called "Son of a Sinner." Me and Ernest had wrote it with David. And I remember Ernest being like, "Yo, such and such might cut this, and we want to pitch it up." And it was the first time in my career that I had to make that kind of decision where I was like, I don't know, man, I think this is a Jelly Roll sound. He's like, me too, I think you should cut it. But I'm telling you, you know, if you want to, if you don't feel, you know, if you feel uncomfortable with cut, because I never co-wrote a song at that point. So I felt a little uncomfortable even having an extra name. And to that point, every other published song name on my record was the guitar player. Like I would just get published into the guy with the guitar, you know what I mean? So it was really different for me, and I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And I just remember like instinctually being like, I don't think anybody else in town could sing that song. And much like you found your songs that way, I focus on, like, it was important to me to, like, that's why I admired you so much, was that, one, all the crazy shit you did artistically is just always blew my mind. You're the boldest motherfucker I know by a country mile. It's unreal. You're fearless. But it was like, you were so Eric Church all the time. Like, even coming off Chief, you're like, I'm gonna do a surprise release and just give it to my fans first. And then the top 10 song ever to me is Record Year still. I mean, top 10 of every song ever written. I put Record Year in my top 10. I'll argue right now at a bar, you know? But it was kind of that same journey with me, is that finding the sound that is Jelly Roll. And I want to tell you in front of everybody how much you personally inspired that, because so many artists lacked identity in country music. And it was so cool that you also see that it's trendy, right? Like this is like country radio gets a sound, and you were always like, I'm doing what Eric Church is doing. This is, nobody else could have sung Record Year. I wouldn't have believed it. There's not another person from your era that could have sung Record Year that would have made me feel it the way I felt it, you know? And dude, on behalf of everybody in here, thank you, man, for changing the genre. You walked so guys like me could run. And yeah, that means more to me than
You're running.
No, I'm running.
I know they're telling me we got to wrap it up. I got a couple more. So, you guys want to go? We'll stay here if you don't want to be here. I mean, sure. It's just us Southern Baptists.
Has this been as cool as it's felt like from up here?
So, I'm trying to figure out how much time I got left and where I can go here. I real quick, when you came out of jail, and the only reason I go on that is, the reason I'm harping on this is I feel like there's a fundamental thing that happens with what you're talking about with beating on the glass and finding your tribe, which is what I saw at the Gorge, that I will say to this room and I will say to the world, I've never seen before in music. I've never seen somebody that communicated to the people that, not that they were forgotten, but they were had challenges or they weren't the normal people. They were in a different lane. 2 questions. One, when you came out, how fast did you meet the guy from Broken Bow you were talking about, right? And then second, did he see that? And is what made him did he see what I saw? Because that was what, if I had seen that, if I had seen what I saw there, everybody talks about, well, it's not really radio, this doesn't fit the mold of country radio of a record label, right? I would have bet the farm on what I saw you do that night.
Thank you. No, that's what happened. I dropped Save Me independently, and it went insanely viral. And all these LA and New York labels started calling me, because I guess maybe I didn't look like a country guy, but I grew up here, So they were calling, they were like pitching me these crazy ideas of like, I love Charlie Puth, we're friends now, but a guy would be like, yo, I got a Charlie Puth hook. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, but I'm like trying to get with Eric Church or Tim McGraw. And the guy was like, who? And I was like, not the label before.
I bet he did say that.
You know what I mean? And then and then by then you know this probably, but I had built the business. Like, I had 1 billion views on YouTube. Like, I had built a really foundational business at that point as far as like a connection. I thought that was my flock at that point. I was selling 2,000 tickets in the Southeast and Midwest, and I was like, fuck y'all, I'm on fire. You know what I mean? It was crazy, it was so nuts. But my passion was country music. And then I would go meet with the country labels in town, and they were like, have you talked to the LA people? And I was like, oh, damn. And then Jonathan Loba and a guy named Adrian Michaels, who is a legendary radio head in this town. He started showing up, and I don't want to keep going too long, but I got to tell you this story because you'll appreciate this. I just was like, he's a label guy, so I was just like, and he showed up looking like, I love Meatball Adrian, y'all, that's one of my best friends, but he looks like a label guy. He wears his top hat, he's got his little suit and his jacket, he's, hey, he's like a magician, he's always doing this, and jazz hands, and y'all know this guy, right? So, and I was like, he would come and meet me at the office, because I was so dedicated to get on this. In the middle of meeting with other labels, I rent a house on Music Row, like a block from Big Loud. I'm like, I am camping here with Ernest. I'm gonna harass Ernest every day. I'm like, I am here. I'm gonna make I would call him in the middle of the night, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and wake him up. And he would, you know how he's such a radio guy, 1 in the morning, he'd go, hey! I go, what's up, Meatball, what you doing? He goes, just listening to Jelly Roll, just listening to Jelly Roll. And I'm like, well, good, hop in an Uber right quick and come meet me at the comedy club. And this was back in my heavy drinking days, and I would just bury him all night. And he would show up to the label the next day hungover, and Lo would be like, I don't care what it takes, you just keep showing up to that fucking comedy club. And I said, I'd love for y'all to come, see a show. And around 2021, I came up, when we were back working, they came and seen it, but the deal was done in my eyes. When Loba wanted to take Save Me to country radio before Son of a Sinner even, that's when I knew he was my guy. It was a 4-minute and 14-second song. I didn't know that you could do a turnaround musically, so the chorus is an entire 8-bar loop of just ooh. It's not like I did that geniusly. I didn't know I could make it shorter. I didn't have that information. You know what I'm saying? So I was just completely not, it's everything that wasn't supposed to be a hit. And Loba was like, he's seen what you've seen with Smoke, A Little Smoke. I'm doing 6,000 people, 7,000 people in a field in Georgia that are just crying to save me. Dudes that look like me and you, like big tough son dudes, they're just bawling. And Loba was like, whatever it took. And my heart was country music, and I was so green. He said, what do you want out of this deal? I said, two things, man. I really want to play the Grand Ole Opry. He was just like, okay. And I was like, and I want to be in the local newspaper. It's called the Tennessean. And I've only been in there once for getting arrested. And it would be really cool if I could write that and it would run a story. 3 years later, I'm sitting with Eric Church. All right, it's good, man.
So I'm gonna
questions, but I just want to say that this is in the history of country music. Let me play a story in here, okay? I think you're one of the most unique artists we've ever had, and I've seen a lot of it. I've studied most of it. Again, a music snob. I mean, Dylan's a decent writer. But, so for me, I think the honesty, disarmingly honest, is how I would describe you, which is what I love about you. Has been the biggest, you know, what as radio and as the industry we should know. That's what the fans gravitate to. That's what they want. They want somebody that will be honest with them about their flaws, about their shortcomings, about their triumphs. And I think a lot of times we try to make this fabricated in a way. We try to make it look like it's not. And you're the exact opposite of making it look like it's not. So, 2 questions. I was watching you've been on 2 million commercials, but I was watching something with my youngest son, and he's 10 years old, and it was the Menace to Society, Nashville, whatever commercial. I don't know what commercial it was. But he was crying, laughing, you know, because everybody's trying to come to Nashville, and he was like, "You were a nice guy," and they were trying to protect you. I'm a menace, you know. So my son still walks around going, "I'm a menace," you know. My point is, do you have acting like what is? Do you like that? Is that something you want to look at? Do you want to be? You want to do some acting? Do you want to do the theater or the movie? Is that something that inspires you? Is it creatively? Does it get you going?
Yeah, way more than I thought it would, Eric.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to like it until I got to do some commercial. Everybody was like, "You're going to hate it." And then I went there and I was like, "I love it." And I was like, "Oh, it's so much more."
Yeah.
I think it's another way to express it. And I don't know why. I've never probably shared this way, Eric. But when I write songs, no matter how good my life is going, I just write from the darkest moments of my shadow. You know, and I've tried to get out of that. But it's just, I think it's maybe what God blessed me with, to tap into that power.
Darkness in My Shadow is a good song title, by the way. Everybody forget you heard that. I'm going to take that, okay? Darkness in My Shadow is pretty good.
But it's, but it's, when I get to act, I get to like show the more jovial guy that I am now. Like, you know, I'm happy, dude. I'm almost 10 years into my marriage and I'm head over heels. I'm more in love now than I was on year one. You know, it's like my daughter's 16, fit to go to college, and we're like homies now. I'm no longer having to like overparent. It's like just kind of having it's just, I'm in such a good space that this outlet allows me to kind of be I'm a menace. I'm a mean guy. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I like it, dude. Thanks for asking.
So last question, first of all, I just want to thank Jay and everybody here. This is among my favorite humans that has ever lived, and I just love you and what you do. I really do, and I love the honesty. Anytime you ever need me, I'm here. But I will. My last question would be, where do you see yourself? Let's do time machine. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And I ask that not only professionally, but personally. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
Ooh, well, in 5 years, I'd like to be at my fighting weight. I'm about 125 pounds from it now before me just turned. Y'all think
You've already done that. You can do that.
I'm more than halfway there. I would like to have put out a couple of more albums and hopefully done a couple of feature films. But as me and you talked about it super privately, we didn't get into it today. I would be leaning more into your advice at that point, hopefully into other business adventures. I think the one thing that people miss in the Eric Church business sometimes is just how, that's why I came to you for mentorship. You're the most savvy businessman in the music business. I've met with them all. I've talked to all these artists. Nobody compares to the way you handle your business and build brands. And you've just inspired. When I found out you had a piece of the Charlotte Hornets, dog, I woke up a whole different human. My wife has not quit hearing about it for 2 years. That's all I talk about. I'm like, baby, we can own the Titans one day.
So that answers you. So like
5 years from now, I hope I'm sitting on your back porch going, I fucking did it, dude. I got 5% of the time.
We'll work on that. We can make that work. So I want to say thanks for having us, and this is one of the most unique and honest and influential artists, I think, for the next generation. Jason, Mr. Jelly Roll, and thank you guys for having us. I've been told I got to get off here. But we really appreciate it.
Thank y'all so much. Thank you, Eric Church. You didn't have to do this. I love you.